energy transition.
As the United Nations General Assembly continues in New York, one major talking point during discussion is the economic inequalities among nations. Leaders at the gathering particularly pointed to the widening trade imbalance in favor of developed nations against their less developed counterparts. This report takes a look at the issues.
Not a few of the world leaders who have mounted the rostrum at this General Assembly of the United Nations have spoken about it. The trade imbalance against developing countries of the world. Nigerian leader President Bola Tinubu has also hit on it.
Proclamations have been made, yet our troubles remain close at hand. Failures in good governance have hindered Africa, but broken promises, unfair treatment, and outright exploitation from abroad have also exerted a heavy toll on our ability to progress.
Now, what are the statistics available? According to figures from International Monetary Fund, IMF, Asia accounts for 38.1% of the global GDP, North America 29.1%, with South America 3.9%, and Europe 23.6%, leaving Africa with a paltry 2.8% and Oceania 1.9%. However, the value of world merchandise trade, according to figures from World Bank, rose by 12% to $25.3 trillion in 2022. This is inflated in part by high global commodity prices, while the value of world commercial service trade increased by 15% in 2022 to $6.8 trillion. Africa, despite the launch of its Continental Free Trade Area in 2018, arguably the world's largest free trade areas in terms of number of member countries, territories and population connecting 1.3 billion people across 55 countries, and a combined gross domestic product of $3.4 trillion as the short end of the stick globally.
When you look at the configuration of the global economy, between Europe and America, which is Southern America, I mean to say, account for almost 50% of the global GDP. So in other words, the remaining 50% is between Southern America, Asia, and part of Africa. And when you even further drill down, Africa only accounts for 3% of global GDP.
Yes, you may not have that very opportunities or the strength or capacity to play in the international global market. But where there is equity, it creates that room and opportunity for you to also participate. So Africa or the African countries are actually demanding some level of equity.
Adefolari Olamilekan says the component of trade, which include technological advancement and transfer, should be negotiated in bloc and not individually by African countries.
I want to believe that by the time each bloc comes to the table, an agreement will be sought. But we want to put it forward that Africans are still at the receiving end, because most of our negotiators don't know how to negotiate on a strong perspective or a strong point of Africa. Rather, they end up negotiating on a weaker perspective, which doesn't give us the needed boost to go forward in this era. So for me, it is not about going to the round table and begin to talk about, and we are going to give you aid, we are bringing investment. Rather, Africans should negotiate on their strong perspective, on their strong point, whereby it is not about aid collection.
Equity, there's nothing else to present. Is equity appeal to the consciousness of these developed countries to allow the developing country to also play in the same space. Like I said, give a quota. If you say that I will operate an airline, give a quota that Nigeria can fly to Dubai, fly to US, fly to Germany, fly to UK.
But should the domination of global trade by the developed countries be blamed on them?
So in other words, there are internal issues that Africa needs to unbundle around infrastructure, regional trade, regional cooperation, and of course, around infrastructure, investment in infrastructure, investment in human capital. And of course, how have you been treating yourselves even as African Union? How have we been treating ourselves even as ECOWAS, the Southern African Development Commission? How are we doing business? Let us even bring it down locally. What is the nature of business between Nigeria and Benin Republic, for instance?
So, what are developing countries, especially those on Africa, brought to the trade negotiation table? Even as a Nigerian, Dr. Ngozi Okonjo-Iweala is Director General of the World Trade Organization that can skew things in their favor.
The balancing it up is for us to give and take. The developed countries must know that at this point in time, when it comes to fair trade, it's about give and take. Africa has been giving a lot of raw material that at the end of the day, they end up receiving what is not equivalent to what they've given us.
But the truth remains that most of the developing countries from the African extraction is not having the fair deals. Most of the 90% of our exports are all raw materials. We are not having finished products. So there is imbalance.
As the president of Brazil, Luiz Inácio da Silva, who was the first to address the assembly, said in a very passionate speech, the widening inequalities occasioned by trade imbalance and domination must be bridged, and it must not be by mere lip service. This General Assembly of the UN wraps up shortly. Will trade imbalance unfavorable to developing countries be closed up through side meetings by various parties on bilateral or multilateral basis? Or will nationalism and protectionism still hold sway? September 2024 is just a year away to access progress or otherwise. Lanre Balola, AIT News, Abuja, Nigeria's capital.
And leaders from African countries and global peace ambassadors converged in Abuja on Thursday to discuss strategies on the involvement of women in peace building. The event, organized to mark the International Peace Day, wants the ECOWAS to bring women into the discussion table for peace building process.